I got linked 2 memes. What are these memes?
All right, team, listen up.
What's up, boss?
I've got some good news and bad news regarding your employment.
Finally, yes. Are any of us getting fired?
The good news is I'm closer to finding out, and the bad news is, frankly, unintelligible.
What?
As you know, Elon's waste task force is supposed to clarify our roles.
So what are our roles?
Unclear.
I got an email asking me to explain what I did last week.
Don't answer that.
It says I'm fired if I don't.
Then answer it.
I just sent it my social security number.
Okay, let's just stop replying to emails.
Are we fired?
Hard to say, but easy to confirm.
What?
Possibly, but alternatively, maybe.
Just yes or no, man.
100% chance, there's a 50% chance, 10 of you still have a job.
Come on.
Okay, hold on, new email from Elon, all right? It reads, the Prince of February stalks the forest, a piece of every land. Who giveth his iron shield shall rule the chamber floor.
Is that a f***ing riddle?
No, this makes it very clear, I think.
Who's the Prince of February?
Let's just fill out our government-issued meme personality tests, okay? Mine said that I'm the Virgin versus Chad meme.
Am I getting fired?
Yes, you specifically, but that's only because you're annoying the shit out of me.
Seriously?
No, I don't know. Guys, let's look on the bright side here, okay? We're all being super productive.
Based. All right. Is there any more of this cross we need to look at? Is the whole cross exam on this video, or I think it bleeds over into the next video a little. These guys did it. That's pretty bad. They fucked up. I don't know if there's any more that's worth.
Down the road, that led me to believe there's probable cause that something has happened down there. Something has happened with this guy again. Let me make sure, let's see what happened. Let me make sure everybody's okay. It's identified.
All right, so you just said, based on everything, you think something had happened.
Okay.
But you had no idea what had happened.
At that time, no.
All right. And at this point in time, you tell this jury that your father had suffered a couple heart attacks, a stroke, and a hip replacement.
Yes, ma'am.
And you grabbed your shotgun and walked outside with it, and that's when you saw Mr. Albenzi.
Yes, ma'am.
So you'd already made the decision inside the house to go with your father to go track down Mr. Arbery.
Made the decision to find out why he was so excited, what was going on at the time. I walked outside to analyze the situation to see why my father, who's had 2 heart attacks, a stroke. Yes, ma'am.
And you grabbed your shotgun and walked outside with it, and that's when you saw Mr. Albenzi.
Yes, ma'am.
Defendant's Exhibit 14. Your son was inside the house, correct?
He was.
And this car seat was in the car.
Yes.
So when you get in the car and Greg Michael goes to get in the car, this doesn't stop the two of you. The car seat being there and going, well, you know, Dad, we really can't do this. The car seat's there. Let's just call the police.
It did not. He kept saying, go down there, go down there. Like I said, seeing the neighbor down there, seeing how he acted on the 11th, acted like he was brandished a weapon. I don't know what's happened. I don't know if somebody got hurt. I don't know what happened. I'm just going to go down and investigate. It was.
So you go down and investigate, even though you testified, you're not going to chase or investigate someone who is armed,
I
correct?
didn't know if he was armed or not. I don't know if he was armed or not. Just go and look. I'm not going to just look at the totality of the circumstance. It's not stopping you to the point and say, you know, are you armed, or if he had a gun or anything, I would have backed off. I just want to go and see what's going on. That was all it was at that point.
You didn't tell your dad this is a really, really bad idea that could go really wrong for us and we should just stay here and call 911. You didn't say that, did you?
I didn't.
Now, when you got inside the truck, you had your phone with you.
Yeah, yes, I had my phone.
And you didn't call 911 at that point.
I did not.
And you didn't give it to your dad to call 911 at that point.
No, because I thought that he had called 911 and he had his phone at the time.
Would this be a good stopping point, Judge?
Yeah, but we can stop here.
Okay. These guys were cooked.
So we're asking for rare earth and oil, anything we can.
Oh, God. Oh, God. I don't know what Jank's position is. Walsh, I hope, has a strong position on this. I don't even know who this guy is over here. Oof. Oof. When Trump said Zelensky had a 4% approval, do you think an aide cherry-picked Zelensky's worst poll numbers and told him it was plus 4% net approval, meaning 52? Who knows, bro? I don't know. Who's at the bottom left? Some lady that I spoke to that I said it was kind of a nice conversation, and then I think towards the end I was like, you're like an evil person, I think, because she was like a super manipulative.
My position, I'm ready to do that. Secondly, I can exchange it for NATO membership, if there is such.
So we're asking for rare earth and oil, anything we can get.
He doesn't care about Russia or Ukraine. So this is a robbery now. Tesla has lithium go in its batteries. Elon wants that lithium.
I do think it's kind of gangster to try to like strong arm Ukraine into giving us what really isn't rightfully ours.
NATO has...
Oof, even all the traditional Trump defenders are having a hard time with this one. Oh no. How are you doing there, Dave Smith, who was defending Trump and thinking he'd have a better foreign policy? Now we've got, let's take over Gaza and let's fully surrender Ukraine and steal all their minerals.
Generally been kind of a force for good, yeah?
No, I find it to be very immature thinking to say NATO's either good or bad. Pierce, you and Tucker had your argument about this, but if you want to say NATO's a defensive alliance, I mean, I guess, except for all of the times when it's not.
There's no going back from a parade.
When did, what was, I feel like there was one big NATO mission that wasn't defensive. Was it Libya or was it Gulf 1? Which one was it? Was it Libya? I think it might have been Libya. Oh no, Serbia. It might have been Serbia. The Yugoslavia shit? Is that the only one? Libya might have been a UN Security Council authorized, maybe. No, that doesn't make sense. Because Russia would have been on that. NATO has never been about offense. There was one offensive mission. It might have been NATO was defending Kosovo from Serbia, though. What was the impetus for NATO to become involved? We intervened in that as a defensive action, as I think it's easily framed. Okay, but I mean, it was one that wasn't. It didn't involve like an Article 5 invocation or whatever, right? But I think that's like the one you could point to. But otherwise, I don't know how else you could. I don't know what else you would argue that NATO is offensive on. Maybe Dave Smith will give us his brilliant historical takes.
Celebrating the mutilated, strangled bodies of babies.
Jeez.
What Hamas did is so stupid, but are we ever going to talk about the 15,000 dead children that Israel slaughtered?
There will never be peace in this region as long as the Palestinian people do not believe Israel has a right to exist.
When is it going to get through your thick heads that Palestine doesn't exist because of the murderous terrorist state of Israel?
On the third anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, President Trump is clear about what he wants, an end to the war. The US president has doubled down on his false claim that President Zelensky is a dictator and that Ukraine started the conflict. Zelensky says he'll give up the presidency for peace and offered to do so immediately in exchange for...
Yeah, that's true. How does he say what Hamas did was stupid? Not like bad or evil, just stupid. Oopsies. We did a whoopsies.
Membership of NATO.
If it's about peace in Ukraine and you really want me to leave my position, I'm ready to do that. Secondly, I can exchange it for NATO membership, if there is such an opportunity. I'll do it immediately, without a long conversation about it. I am focused on Ukraine's security today and not in 20 years. I don't plan to be in power for decades.
Spoken like a true dictator, I'm sure we can all agree. Well, the US and Ukraine are also sparring over whether tens of billions in US aid, much of it spent in the US on US weapons, will have to be paid back. Trump's coarse words have muddied the waters, but the negotiating stance is becoming clearer. The United States wants a share of Ukraine's vast mineral wealth, and it also wants Europe, not Washington, D.C., to guarantee its security and future. And the president's personal attacks on Zelensky may be the uncomfortable cost of bringing Putin to the table. If he's not there, the war can't end. Trump said in a statement on Monday that the minerals deal is an economic partnership to ensure the American people recoup tens of billions of dollars. He also said that he's now in serious discussions with Putin about ending the war and that talks are proceeding very well. Well, so far, so good. But dealing with devils carries risks, laid bare in the latest chilling scenes from Gaza. Hamas turned the release of 4 dead hostages, 2 of them children, into a sick parade. One coffin contained the wrong remains. Others were stuffed with Hamas propaganda. 3 empty commuter buses in Tel Aviv then exploded in a botched terror attack. You can believe in the art of the deal, but not the people that the United States is dealing with. Well, the founder and CEO of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, host of the Part of the Problem podcast, Dave Smith, Free Press writer and author of Second Class, How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Men and Women, Batia Ungar-Sargon, and the host of Social Contract and former Republican presidential candidate Joe Walsh, all join me. I'm also joined by the retired US Army Brigadier and a former Assistant Secretary of State under George W. Bush, General Mark Kimmitt. Well, welcome to all of you. I want to start by playing a clip from an interview I did with the former British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. There is this weird disconnect
Well,
by
thanks,
many in
YMMK, for the
America,
50 bucks.
particularly on the conservative right, who do not share our view, who seem to think that Zelensky is the real villain here, and that Putin was provoked into doing this to safeguard his own security because of NATO encroachment and so on.
Hey, the guy!
What do you say to that specific argument?
It's totally mad. It's totally mad. It's through the looking glass. It's the complete opposite. And by the way, to say that I had some role in persuading the Ukrainians to fight for their country is a great, it's obviously totally implausible, but it's also a great big fat steaming lie.
Oh, I wonder if Dave Smith is one of the people that propagate that. There's another Russian talking point that Ukraine was like ready to surrender. And I don't remember why Boris Johnson went down. I don't know if it was just to show support. I don't know if it was there on like official like negotiation business or whatever. But after he went down and then came back, people were saying Boris Johnson went down because he was telling Ukraine that they had to keep fighting because the West needed them to keep fighting or whatever. That's like part of the, it's just like there's absolutely no basis in reality for this, but it's just a random conspiracy that people spread.
Well, let me start with...
peddles that conspiracy. Does Hassan do that one?
Implausible, but it's also a great big fat steaming lie.
Well, let me start with General Kimmitt on this, just from a pure military perspective, General, and thank you for joining me tonight. Who started this war?
Well, first of all, I think it's pretty clear that the Russians invaded in 2022. There's some questions, I'd say, historically about what happened in 2014. But if you're talking...
Oh, who is this guy? Oh, man. All right, we got one guy on here that believes that Euromaidan was a CIA coup. I know she does in the bottom left. Never heard her speak about Ukraine in my life, but I already know that she believes that 100%. And Cenk, I'll give him a 50-50. And Dave Smith, I'll give him a 70-30. I don't remember if I've heard him say that or not. Joe Walsh hopefully doesn't believe this. Come on, Joe.
Talking about what happened 3 years ago, it was clearly...
Wait. Joe Walsh literally repeats that same... Oh, wait. Is this him?
That's it.
Oh, no, Dave
We'll
Smith.
destroy the human species if we do this. And yet there's this war right on Russia's border, and there's no effort to negotiate going on. There's like no effort. In fact, from very solid reporting, that actually America, through Boris Johnson, told Ukraine not to negotiate with Russia at the very beginning of the war when they had a deal worked out.
This is bullshit. This is just 100% lies. This is a 100% pure Russian propaganda bullshit lies talking point. There was no credible reporting on this. Nobody believes this. There's no evidence for this. It's just fucking stupid. It doesn't even make sense. Through Boris Johnson, why the fuck would we have to do, no offense to the UK, why would we have to do diplomatic work through Boris Johnson? The fuck?
A deal worked out. There's been reported in multiple sources that they had a deal worked out, and the deal was basically that Vladimir Putin would pull back. He would pull back his troops and leave Ukraine under the condition that the very simple conditions that Ukraine guaranteed autonomy for the Donbass region and agreed to never join NATO. And like that was a deal. Like, oh.
The Russians, there was no warning about it. There was no provocation on the part of Zelensky. There was certainly no movement of Ukrainian forces to threaten the Russians in the east. So this one goes to, this one definitely goes to Putin.
And in terms of where we are in this potential peace settlement, it seems to be more and more that the jungle drums are beating. I got this feeling from Boris Johnson. I got it actually from interviewing President Zelensky 10 days ago or so, that there's a kind of general acceptance of various things, even if they're not being stated explicitly. But one is that Ukraine will not, as part of the settlement, get full membership of NATO. That seems to be completely off the table. Secondly, there's likely to be a freezing of the territorial lines where they are right now. In other words, where they barely moved in the last virtually a year, actually. That kind of eastern slide, the 20% that Putin's taken, where things have been pretty well at a stalemate, that will remain under Russian occupation, but probably not without any sovereignty transferred to Russia. And that America will recoup some of the money it's put up to help protect Ukraine and to continue supplying protection, perhaps as part of a united force, including Europeans going forward, by taking a chunk of Ukraine's mineral revenue going forward and minerals themselves. That seems to be where we're heading here. Is that your reading of this, and how workable would that be?
Well, if you're asking me, first of all, the battle lines have been at a stalemate for almost 2 years now. I wrote an article for the Wall Street Journal in July of 2022 predicting that we are going to see this World War I Flanders field trench warfare. So nothing has happened on the ground of any consequence. But I think you've outlined what the basic framework of the American position is. And I think it's important to understand that the view from the conservative right is that if we're going to support a country in Eastern Europe like Ukraine, there should be a return on that investment, that the American taxpayer shouldn't have a total cost to them. If there's a return on that investment, mineral wealth, I think that's where the businessman Donald Trump comes in.
Shakedown.
I think you described it right. It will probably end up as a frozen conflict. The Europeans right now are talking about not only a frozen conflict, but a situation where it could well be the peacekeepers are put into the Donbass so that both sides withdraw outside. So it looks much like, say, Kashmir or the area between North Korea and South Korea. But that has to be negotiated. I think we're a long way from a settlement before we actually see what the architecture of the deal looks like.
Yeah, let me bring in some of the rest of the panel. So, Joe Walsh, I mean, I hoped and prayed that Ukraine could repel Russia, but my army brother, who I've cited a lot, but he was a colonel in the British Army, fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, and knows more about these things than I do. He said from the very start, there is not a chance that Ukraine is going to beat Russia. They just do not have enough firepower to do this. And he said that steadfastly through it, to the point where I understood he's right. And I don't think anybody thinks that Ukraine can now win this war. Which brings me to Donald Trump and his blunt instrument way of dealing with these things. We saw it in Gaza. We're seeing it again with Ukraine. I don't like the way he talks about President Zelensky. I don't know why he has to demonize him in all this. I think calling him a dictator when you're not calling Putin a dictator is
pretty crazy.
Ludicrous. I think saying Ukraine started this is also ludicrous. However, if the bigger picture for Trump is taking a battering ram to an intransigent military scenario, just painted so well by General Kimmett, where it's just going nowhere. And excuse me, I spoke to Trump on the phone a few weeks ago, and he told me about the reports he was getting about the killing on the ground, and he said it was exactly like World War I, just big open fields and both sides gunning each other down, thousands of casualties.
Oh, Hassan repeats that same conspiracy theory.
There's a that's
our good friend Williamson there. Williamson, sorry.
Why you have to have China at the table as well, but
well,
ultimately
Xi went to Russia. We were hoping for that. I was hoping for that. Xi went to Russia. He spoke with Putin. Zelensky said, "Hey, call me." We were all hoping. Listen, I don't care who can come up with an answer to this, and we were hoping, and they actually ended up with these quite weak principles. So,
well, there was a 15-point plan negotiated in Turkey in the earlier version of the invasion that seemingly was a little bit more prosperous. Zelensky himself even conceded to pushing Crimea later down, to like a 15-year program for Crimea, where he would like have another democratic vote on how to
another democratic vote, implying the first one was. Come on, get to the part to where everybody in the world, every single party in the world was ready for peace, except for the United States, which forced Boris, under threat of murdering his whole family, to go and blow up the peace deal.
best continue on with those negotiations. That all fell apart when Boris Johnson visited Ukraine, and I don't think that England has any sort of agency in this conversation beyond
the U.S.
operating as a mouthpiece for the American State Department.
And there's that interview with Naftali Bennett and so forth. So yeah, I mean, I don't think you have to excuse the United States to stand for the sovereignty of Ukraine.
Yeah, I'm just saying that like there was a
And
peace
I don't disagree
negotiation with a 15-point plan.
I don't disagree with that.
So that's Russia and Ukraine. You talked about multipolarity. So what is your opinion on the current administration dealing with China, and what would you do differently?
We need to walk back the Cold War talk. We need to completely...
Multipolarity is a buzzword, a slang. Every single time you hear somebody say multipolarity, all they're saying is we have to destroy the United States. That's what that means every single time, by the way. Don't ever let any far lefty loser convince you otherwise. That's always what that means.
Shift the paradigm of foreign relations. You know, this is, we skirt disaster. We skirt disaster when it comes to the environment. We skirt disaster when it comes to the economy. We skirt disaster when it comes to people's lives and healthcare. We skirt disaster when it comes to war. We absolutely must move from an oppositional adversarial role with other powers. Once again, like you and I both agreed, it's a multipolar world now. We're not the only superpower. And it's our own fault, by the way. It's our own fault. We squandered our moral authority. We squandered...
A day. And he said, this cannot go on. So I think he genuinely wants to end this senseless...
What does multipolarity literally mean? I don't know who invented the term, but the idea is basically that we have to move into a world where there are multiple poles of power. It's not just a unipolar world like the United States. Some IR people, I think Mearsheimer was one of them, I think popularized the concept that in a unipolar world, it would descend into chaos and mayhem. Like his predictions after the fall of the Iron Curtain, I believe, is that Europe would just go back to the chaos prior to World War I. If it was only a multipolar world, everybody would start fighting amongst themselves and it would all fall apart. So they say, we need multipolarity. We need a strong Russia and China. But whenever you talk to these people, they will make an infinite amount of excuses for an infinite amount of crimes committed by Russia or China, but they will always cuck the United States' ability to act. So if Russia were to go, across the border and just rape 1 million women, it would be like, well, they're a great power. What do you expect them to do? But if the United States were to say, hey, don't do that, or we're going to sanction you, all of a sudden they would discover morality and claim that the U.S. has to act better and needs to curb its enthusiasm and blah, blah, blah. Like it's just the most... Every single person that has a multipolarity is always on some anti-U.S., hate America, hate the West shit. Every single time, without exception.
The slaughter. And I've not seen a better idea, frankly, to getting this sorted than the kind of scenario that Trump has laid out, which is we get minerals and we supply some security, and the Europeans have to step up too and supply security, and that's how we move forward. Do you see a better way of resolving this? Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. Our sponsors mean we can bring it to you for free. Support for today's show comes from Beam.
I don't think that's a fair summary of Mearsheimer's position or what he means. I don't think he's rebelling anti-American. I don't think I've ever seen Mearsheimer critical of the state of Russia ever. He seems to be committed wholly to spending as much time on his knees for every single Russian talking point ever. I've never seen a more reliable printing machine for KGB talking points than Mearsheimer. But maybe I've missed it. Maybe there are other speeches or other things that I just haven't seen of his, but...
Who can help you out with an issue of utmost importance, sleep. Good sleep, as I can confirm, is the foundation of physical and mental health. Our daily performance depends on it. That's why we are delighted to talk about Beam's Dream Powder, a science-backed, healthy hot cocoa for sleep. It's tested for high-quality efficiency and formulated to ease your body into rest, supporting the 4 stages of the sleep cycle to help you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. Many other sleep aids cause next-day grogginess, but Dream contains a powerful, all-natural blend of reishi magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin.
Damn.
Helps you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up refreshed. If you, like me, need a good lie down after an uncensored debate, you can try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder with 40% off for a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/Piers and use code Piers at checkout. That's shopbeam, BEAM.com/Piers, P-I-E-R-S, and promo code Piers at checkout. Now, on with the show.
I don't know, Pierce, but even if you buy that benign view of Trump, that he just wants to end the war, I still don't know how you explain what he's done and said in the past month. If you wanted to end the war, then why are you only beating up on
one side
and bad-mouthing
one side
and lying about the country that was invaded?
Yep.
Lying about. Lying, Pierce, that Ukraine started this war. I'm coming to you today, Pierce. The UN just passed a resolution earlier today on the 3-year anniversary calling on Russia to simply withdraw from sovereign Ukraine. The United States of America voted against that UN resolution. Think about that. The United States joined Russia and North Korea in voting against a simple resolution.
So supposedly Serbia voted against it too. I think, right? It was Serbia. And I think their guy came out and said, I don't know who it was. An ambassador or somebody came out and was like, we accidentally misclicked on the vote form. Oops.
That says, Russia, get out of sovereign Ukraine. Every freedom democratic country in the world voted for that resolution.
You know why? You know why America has voted against it? It's because they know it's not going to happen, and they are trying. You know, Trump is trying, and I believe this. I think he is a guy who prefers peace to war. I think he proved that in his first term. So, regardless of the rhetoric, which I think is very unfortunate, I do think that the idea that America right now in this process is going to suddenly vote with the UN, which they feel is pretty discredited anyway, that they're going to vote with a UN resolution to kick Russia out, knowing it's not going to happen. How does that advance the cause?
Why did we vote no? I have no idea. I don't know why we wouldn't just abstain or what. That just is wild to me.
Stronger party. And I think he is playing Putin like a fiddle.
This lady on the bottom left probably is directly paid by Russia. I would not be surprised.
We're not dealing with is
at all if that was the case. Wait, did I accidentally skip ahead?
most basic. This is our.
Whoops, fuck. Wait,
Piers, I so appreciate you being.
That has to be negotiated. I think we're a long way from a settlement before we actually see what the architecture of the deal looks like.
Yeah, let me bring in some of the.
You've outlined what
protection, perhaps as part of a united force, including Europeans going forward.
What the fuck? Wait, where was I on this? I think I clicked forward. This.
Hot cocoa over sleep. It's tested for high quality. Green contains a powerful component.
He just wants to end the war. It's about university.
Very unfortunate, which they feel is pretty discredited anyway. It won't.
It's a resolution, Pierce, honoring the 3rd-year anniversary of Putin's invasion. For the United States to simply say on the 3rd-year anniversary that it was wrong for Putin to invade and he ought to withdraw, that seems like a fairly easy thing for the United States of America to do. But Trump can't do that because he will not distance himself from Putin.
Biden wouldn't have done it either.
I think
Biden wouldn't have what? Voted on the resolution? Have they done a resolution like this before? Why would you assume that? Wait, what? What?
He will not distance himself from Putin.
Biden wouldn't have done it either.
I think he would have.
Really? I don't think
he
so.
would have.
I don't think so. But let me bring in Batia. I mean, Batia, look.
What? Hold on. UN resolution condemning Russia, Ukraine. Fuck. Is there a way I can find these resolutions easily? Search. Resolution. Condemn. Russia. Ukraine. (2024). I wonder if they've done one of these before. Past hours later, in the Security Council versus Citizens Full-Scale Invasion. Okay, maybe this was the first one. The General Assembly draft resolution for funding of member states during the one session they called for peace and to conflict, but diverged. Can I just, why don't they just link to the actual thing? Okay. The United States is here. UN General Assembly vote to condemn the Russian attack on Ukraine. The United Nations General Assembly resolution was passed with 141 nations condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine, while 5 nations voted no and 35 abstained. So the United States has voted yes on a resolution. I don't know if the text, how similar the text is, but if the United Nations has any purpose, it is to prevent war, said the United States U.S. envoy, Linda Thomas Greenfield. Well, good one. Oh, we even have a joint statement. The United States mission to the United Nations, condemning Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. Okay. Good one. What is this? UN General Assembly demands Russia reverse course on attempted illegal annexation. Who voted for this one? The United States voted yes. The UN General Assembly adopted a resolution that condemns Russia's illegal so-called referendums in regions within Ukraine's internationally recognized borders and demands it reverses its annexation declaration. Okay, so that was just a totally made-up bullshit quote by Piers that is not even just made up. It's actually just factually incorrect, but okay.
We're at a very febrile moment in this whole war, but we could also be at the beginning of the end of the war. And if that is what is going on here, and there's a recognition on all sides it's got to come to an end, and we're now just trying to work out how that happens, what is your feeling about the kind of settlement it looks like is on the table?
So, Piers, I so appreciate you being willing to admit this about Donald Trump, because you have been such a stalwart defender of the Ukraine, and yet you are 100%.
The Ukraine. I think she gets, if you're ever curious why people like her say that, it's because they get little bonus checks every time they can use the most offensive phrases possible. If Kiev ever comes up, she's also going to call it Kiev every single time. Kiev and the Ukraine.
100% correct. Donald Trump hates war. He thinks it's totally wasteful. He thinks it's bad for business, and he wants this to end. You know, from the point of view of the American people, there has never been widespread support for this. The American people have never understood why this is our job to fund this. And I think Donald Trump expected when he came into office to find Zelensky the one eager to have this settled, and Putin the one sort of holding off and being recalcitrant. And when he found the opposite, and when he found Zelensky totally unwilling to do the most basic act of gratitude and give the United States a stake in these minerals, I think Trump got very angry about that. Now, I want to address something that I think I agree with people. It seems a little mysterious. I hear people saying this all the time. Why is he, demeaning Zelensky and building up Putin?
Why is he demeaning Zelensky and building up Putin? Because we already have all the leverage we need on Putin, but we don't have any leverage on Zelensky. So this is part of the negotiating tactic to bully Zelensky into signing it because he's the one who's been against it, maybe? I don't know.
I think the answer to that is because Donald Trump is a deal maker, and he does not view international relations the way that the liberal post-world order saw things. You know, the Obama administration, the Biden administration, they have this view of diplomacy that you need to sort of...
I love the hallucination from this dipshit, the actual fantasy that Trump has some coherent view on international relations. It's actually so fucking funny. Oh my God.
Have two equals at the table, or as equal as possible. And so if your ally is the one who is stronger, you got to bring them down a little. If the person that you're not dealing with is weak, you lift them up a little. You get people to an even playing field, and then you can make a deal. And I think Donald Trump sees things in the exact opposite way. He sees them from a real estate point of view. You're never going to get a deal if both sides have equal power. What you actually want is a power disparity, because then the weaker party has more of an incentive to compromise. And the stronger party is going to compromise as well, because they get to remain the stronger party. And I think he is playing Putin like a fiddle. He knows that if he goes out there and builds up Zelensky and makes Putin feel the exact same fears about NATO not being that buffer zone, and NATO, Ukraine not being a buffer zone, Ukraine being part of NATO, Putin will never come to the table. But if he says to Putin, I respect where you're coming from, I don't care about the history, I just want this to end, then that is what's going to get Putin to the table. And I think he assumed that because Ukraine has gotten $200 billion out of the
lie, $200 billion. It's always cash. It's always stolen from the American people. Probably going to say some of it was stolen by the country. Talk about Zelensky's shopping sprees, unaccounted money, whatever, black hole money.
American taxpayer, that they would be willing to come to the table too. And I think he's very upset that Zelensky has not turned out to be that way.
Okay. It's like every single Russian talking about always. Every single video. Imagine you're like this is why I think AI is overhyped, okay? People think that AI can go through all this information and these LLMs are so impressive. But the reality is, if you feed an AI like 10,000 hours of video content about any given topic, it really only has to go through like 7 different talking points to have a comprehensive view on every single thing that's ever been said about it. Like, I fed this AI 400 million hours of people arguing over Russia and Ukraine. Like, what did it spit out at me? Like, give me the pro-Russian arguments. These are the advanced Russian. Okay, there were Ukrainian biolabs, Azov battalion are Nazis, NATO not 1 inch eastward violation. What else? Zelensky's a dictator. No elections. Banned religion. Banned churches. Banned the Russian language. The people voted to leave. It's like this. It's like 7 talking points, and that's all it has to learn. And then it just sees the same thing over and over and over and over again.
Cenk, you were laughing, but I mean, that could be entirely accurate.
No.
No, there's no chance that's accurate.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Okay, so look, at the beginning, this was a giant mystery. I didn't understand what was going on. I might have said this on your show, Piers. I was like, why would we be attacking our ally? Put aside the fact that they're our ally. It doesn't make any sense in negotiation. You want to put leverage on the opposing party, Russia, so that they're willing to get to a deal that we can live with and our ally can live with. Putting pressure on your own ally who's in the weaker position makes no logical sense in a negotiation ever. It's the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do. So putting aside any feelings about Zelensky and Russia, this isn't about that. Just in sheer negotiation, it makes no sense. Okay, so, but now...
Do you think that Piers has Russian ties or is just an idiot? In America, the both sidesers are way more generous towards Russia than Europeans. The both sidesers, if you're a both sideser, but you're European, I think the Russian threat is a little bit more ever-present. It's a little bit more real. So it's hard to both sides that. I don't think you're going to find very many like lay epic centrist people like Piers who are favorable to the Russian side in Europe. It's a little bit spookier.
I've solved it because it's clear now what's happening. Because they want the mineral rights. So he's putting pressure on Zelensky because he doesn't give a damn about what kind of deal Russia and Ukraine strike and how much land one keeps or the other. Do you know what's in the mineral? We keep calling it mineral rights. Titanium and lithium. Oh, what? Who needs lithium?
Elon Musk's batteries.
Tesla has lithium go in its batteries. Elon wants that lithium. So the deal that our Treasury Secretary pushed across the table to Zelensky when they were one-on-one and tried to bully him into signing was, we spent $100 or $200 billion in Ukraine. There's conflicting numbers. But look, we all want peace. We all want to stop spending that money. That's legitimate. The negotiations are perfectly legitimate. The drive for peace, perfectly legitimate. He pushes across a deal for $500 billion in mineral rights. And here's the most important thing that American voters have to understand. Those minerals do not go to us, the American taxpayers, the American citizens. They go to American corporations. We are going to get $0 out of that. But Elon Musk is going to get fabulously even richer. He wants that lithium, and he doesn't care about Russia or Ukraine. So this is a robbery now. And that's why they're pressuring Zelensky instead of Putin.
Okay, Dave Smith, it's a robbery.
Good luck, Dave.
Piers Morgan Uncensored is now proudly independent. If you like the show, we ask for only one thing. Subscribe on YouTube and follow Piers Morgan Uncensored on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
We'll do
now
it.
Let's get straight to the point.
Okay.
Support for today's show comes from a business focused on a critical issue. Prosperity. US national debt is at crisis levels. Inflation has made life more expensive for everybody. And the stock market is precarious. Enough to make anyone's financial future feel grim. So what is the solution? Well, a simple one is to opt out of the chaos and invest in something solid and reliable. Physical, gold, and silver. And there's only one name you need to remember. American
Is the person in the bottom left the one you talked to a few months ago?
Yes, she's evil. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and glowing reviews you can see for yourself. They offer an incredible range of gold and silver bars and coins that can be delivered directly to your door, or they'll help you set them up in a tax-advantaged gold IRA. First-class customer service makes the whole process simple, secure, and straightforward. American Hartford Gold is committed to getting the truth out there and giving you peace of mind in uncertain times. And if that wasn't enough, you'll get up to $15,000 worth of free silver when you make your first purchase and mention my name, Piers. So make the smart move. Call 866-692-2474 or text Piers, that's P-I-E-R-S, to 65532. That's 866-692-2474 or text Piers to 65532. All the details are in the description. Now on with the show.
Thank you.
Well, look, I mean, look, I don't completely.
God, what a hard position for Dave Smith, the #1 fucking Trump fan, centrist to be in. Oof.
Agree with Trump's proposal. I do think it's kind of gangster to try to like strong arm Ukraine into giving us what really isn't rightfully ours, and it's kind of rightfully the people of Ukraine's. By the way, I say this not like as a commie at all. So when I'm saying rightful, I don't mean like the people own it or something. I mean like whoever homesteaded it or something about Lockean property rights. But you know, there's been this major change in Donald Trump's rhetoric towards Zelensky through the campaign and through the very beginning of his administration. He would always just say he had a great relationship with him, and he thinks.
There's been a major change? Excuse me. Trump has been saying super positive things about Putin for years. What are you talking about? There's been a significant change. Shut the fuck up. Oh my God.
Things he can get a deal done. Something there has changed for sure. But in terms of the stuff, look, if you're trying to negotiate a peace to this and you accept that we're not going to get the Biden-Nancy Pelosi pipe dream, which was always a pipe dream, your brother was correct about that, Piers, that we were going to, you know, repel Vladimir Putin from Crimea. This was all just ridiculous. And hundreds of thousands of people died in the pursuit of this unachievable policy. And if we can all accept that we're going to get some type of settlement here, that we're going to have to negotiate an end to this war, and that Ukraine isn't going to be able to defeat the Russians militarily, then obviously it makes absolutely no sense to sign on to these virtue signaling UN resolutions. It makes absolutely no sense for him to be just out there insulting Vladimir Putin, which seems to be the demand from so many progressive Democrats. Like, listen,
nobody wants him to insult him. They want him to take a strong negotiating stance against him because he was supposed to be the great negotiator.
Not a question of whether you think Vladimir Putin is good or bad, and I would agree with you. I mean, me and you do not see eye to eye on this issue, Piers, but I agree it's not accurate to say Zelensky started the war. There are many factors, but Vladimir Putin is the one who invaded the country. But the point is, if you have a hostage negotiation, if someone with a gun runs into a school and holds a bunch of kids hostage and you send in the negotiator, you don't start insulting the guy and just virtue signaling for no reason and talking about how terrible it is to hold kids hostage and what a monster he is and I'm such a better person than him. I would never do anything like that. And the truth is, you do in some cases.
Let them keep some of the kids? Is that what you do? Is that what you do in some cases, Dave Smith? If you want to use this analogy, then let's go ahead and run this analogy. How many kids of the 500 kids that a school hostage taker takes, of those 500 kids, how many kids do you let them keep forever? Well, I'm just curious. If that's the analogy you're going to use, is that what you do? You say you promise them half?
Try to flatter the guy a little bit. Try to get the best deal that you can get. You're trying to save lives here. And I'm not going to speculate like Cenk did on, I don't think this lithium is going to end up being turned over to Elon. And I think it's quite possible that Donald Trump does have some good motives here. And that the truth is that Joe Biden's policy.
And then also, do you shit talk the kids? I like school children that don't get captured by school shooters. I like the ones that ducked, okay? Like, what is this analogy? What?
Regards to Ukraine is the most reckless policy in the history of the modern American policy in general. To be on a proxy war with the two countries with the 90% of the world's nuclear arsenal, to be in a proxy war over whether the Donbass region is ruled by Kiev or Moscow, never made any sense whatsoever. And there have been close calls all throughout this thing. If you think about the Nord Stream pipeline, where we made the attempt to blame that on Vladimir Putin, which was never true. If you think about those missiles that hit Poland, which were Ukrainian missiles, which Ukraine immediately said was Russia, there were very close calls here. If you study the history of the Cold War.
Very close calls to what? What are you talking about? You think that a missile from Ukraine into Poland is going to start World War III? Nobody wants World War III to happen. If World War III was going to happen, it would have happened by now. Like it's obvious that neither Russia nor the United States wants this to happen. It's not like these things just happen on accident.
War, we came very close to nuclear war on a couple different occasions. And so I'm sorry, if Donald Trump is trying to bring an end.
Yeah, but these occasions were generally directly confrontational. The Cuban Missile Crisis is probably the most famous one, but they were shipping nuclear missiles. Like, what is Cuba? Is it like 100 miles? How far is Cuba from Key West? This is a close place, okay? It wasn't a proxy of a proxy shot a proxy who was being supported by whatever, and now we almost had like nuclear winter. These confrontations were like a lot more direct.
Into this war, then I think if he's successful in that, it'll be the greatest accomplishment of his life. And I'm all for trying.
The greatest accomplishment, negotiating the unilateral surrender of Ukraine without them even being invited to the talks. Wow.
to end this war?
Okay, General Kimmett, I mean, I'm
But Dave, that's
very...
not the question. No, he's misdirecting, though. That's not the question. We all want the war to end. And I don't need him to yell at Putin. I don't need him to sign anything.
True.
I just need him to do rational negotiations
True.
so that everyone on here is happy and the war
True.
ends. And I don't need, like, Ukraine to win on every negotiating point. I just want to get the peace. If you want to get the peace, holding up Ukraine for a $500 billion robbery that is obviously going to go to help American corporations like Tesla who need that lithium, that makes no sense, and that hurts the cause that you care about, Dave,
True.
and that all of us care about.
True.
I'm not as convinced, Czech, this is all just some play by Elon. I mean, I think if America can do a deal that gets a lot of Ukraine's minerals in return for the substantial support America's given to Ukraine and would then continue to give, it seems to me a pretty pragmatic deal, actually. My question for General Kimmett would be this, which is, I wouldn't trust Putin as far as I could throw him. And I think his actions in Georgia, in Crimea, now Ukraine, full Ukraine, all this suggests to me is the theory that many people have about him, which is that he wishes the Soviet Union had never been broken up, that he is intent on expanding Russia's territory, and that if he gets away with keeping 20% of Ukraine, then he'll...
Why would he not just do this again for any other non-aligned country?
He'll either come back for more, or he'll try and get it somewhere else and try and expand Russia's power and territorial reach elsewhere. And I've got to say, I'm very cynical. I think that's exactly what he'd like to do. Am I wrong to be cynical?
No, I don't think you're wrong at all. Now, look, he's paid a pretty heavy price in terms of what he's lost in Ukraine. Hundreds of thousands of dead, probably 10 times that amount wounded. But you've got to understand that the Russians can take pain like nobody's business. What he has lost in Ukraine is a fraction of what they lost in World War II. And he is testing NATO, there's no doubt about that. If he wanted to attack, he could continue this attack.
Keep in mind that when you talk about Russian losses during World War II, correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't Ukrainians the largest like bloc or part of the Soviet bloc that died? World War II deaths by region? Am I making this up? I'm pretty sure, yeah, I'm pretty sure Ukrainians were literally the region that lost singularly like the most people. So it's kind of weird to bring up World War II as an example here, but you know, fuck history, who cares?
Testing NATO, there's no doubt about that. If he wanted to attack, he could continue this attack, not in Ukraine, but up in the Baltics, and take back that critical area up in the Baltics that gives him access to...
What? The
Russians can take pain like nobody's business. What he has lost in Ukraine is a fraction of what they lost in World War II. And he is testing NATO, there's no doubt about that. If he wanted to attack, he could continue this attack, not in Ukraine, but up in the Baltics, and take back that critical area up in the...
Oh, never mind. I might actually almost, unfortunately, agree with this, which is disgusting, but...
The Baltics, it gives him access to the Atlantic and the North Atlantic. The only thing I think that is holding him back is that it's not a matter of what he would lose. It's a matter of the fact that he goes from fighting one country, Ukraine, to fighting 27 countries in NATO. So I do think that he does not think for a moment about what he's lost in Ukraine and the effect it has on his population. That's the beauty of being an authoritarian leader. But I do believe that he has those long-term aspirations, as so many Russian monarchs have had throughout history, of expanding the Russian Empire well beyond where it is now. But I will tell you that I disagree with what Boris Johnson told you about, and to use your term, NATO expansion. The fact is that one could make a legitimate argument that the Russians have had a paranoia throughout history about the encroachment of the West. The word Ukraine means the frontier. The Russians have always wanted a frontier between themselves and the West. And if you want to make that argument, that there was some legitimacy of his concern of NATO enlargement and try to dismiss it, I would remind Americans about the Monroe Doctrine. We go ballistic when foreign countries get anywhere near the United States, as we've done in the past. We invaded Grenada, that great existential threat to America. We invaded Panama, yet another threat to the freedom and liberty of Americans. And the only time we really had a legitimate reason for doing that was in '62 when the Soviet Union put nuclear missiles on Cuba. But let's be honest, Americans have the same paranoia about encroachment into our hemisphere.
I super think that's a bullshit ass argument. I think that there might be some legitimacy maybe over the over our behavior in the Cold War. Outside of my historical super knowledgeable part here, but my understanding is the Monroe Doctrine was basically the United States said, also this is pretty old, I think. Basically the United States said, hey, listen, Europe, you guys are cool and you guys can do all of your crazy colonization stuff, but stay the fuck away from South America, okay? No more of your silly colonizing stuff happening over here. Do what you want in other places, but not over in South America. Fuck you. And I think that was basically all the Monroe Doctrine was. But there's a difference between that and like, we want you to not take over or not do any colonization in here because we want to do it. We're going to go take over every single South American country. We're going to go ahead and take over every North American country. Just stay the fuck out of here with your goofy stuff. Russia is not just telling people to stay out. Russia's telling people to stay out so that they can be the military bad boys and like take over Ukraine or huge parts of it. That's, I think it's quite a bit different, but.
As Putin does, into his, what he believes is his hemisphere as well.
Yeah, I do get
his hemisphere. What? So Putin is allowed to dictate that. What is? I don't even know what that means. His hemisphere. What is his? What is his hemisphere? Is it like all of Europe and Asia and Africa and the Middle East, or like what does that even mean? What are we defining that as? Okay.
That argument. I know it's the one that he peddles loudest with his own people, but I think the paranoia stroke desire to not see any impending encroachment as they see it on their border is probably real. It doesn't mean they're right to do what they did. It just means the paranoia is you can understand why some of them, if not all of them, feel that way.
If I could just quickly add, right, because I think sometimes, and even in your question to Boris Johnson, sometimes people go like all or nothing with this, right?
I agree.
So it's not like it was Vladimir Putin provoked, and therefore if he was provoked, he's a great guy and he was justified to invade the country. Like that those second two parts don't follow. But the point is, and I would highly recommend just to back up what was just said here, if anyone wants to go read, because the CIA director for all 4 years of Joe Biden's administration, who was the CIA director while this entire war was going on, Burns, right? He is the one who authored the Niet means Niet memo that was sent to Condoleezza Rice, and this was not for the public. We only know about this because Julian Assange leaked it, but he said he was, at the time, he was the ambassador to Russia, and he put out this entire document where he was like, look, these plans of including Ukraine in NATO is going to be a disaster. And I've been over here talking with everybody in Russia, not just Vladimir Putin, even his sharpest liberal critics. They all agree that this is the brightest of red lines for them. They will not tolerate Ukraine being a part of America's military alliance. And I just don't understand why of course we would not tolerate that either. If China or Russia wanted to bring Mexico into their military.
It's so stupid. This comparison, nobody calls him out on it. It's so stupid. We're not actively invading Canada and Mexico. It doesn't make sense for them to join in alliance like that. Yeah, of course. And these are oceans apart. Why would that? It's not even a remotely accurate comparison. Like what would even be the cause for them to join an alliance like that? It's not like we're invading them all the time. It's not even remotely similar.
Of course, we would not tolerate that either. If China or Russia wanted to bring Mexico into their military alliance and then just announced, as they did 2 months after this memo at the Bucharest summit, that they were going forward with that, and then there was, and then they poured tens.
Actually, careful, that might not age well, because who knows, maybe Trump will try to invade. We're not. Let me qualify it. We're not yet invading Canada or Mexico.
Maybe over $100 million into a street protest, which overthrew the democratically elected president of
And then there's the Russian propaganda for 2014. Remember, Euromaidan was just a CIA coup, and we know all of that because there was one leaked phone call where our diplomats said they'd prefer one leader to the other.
Mexico, who was going to make a deal with us, and then went in the other, we would have the exact, and I don't think Washington, D.C. would be above invading Mexico if that's what they needed to do. We would never tolerate that, and we could recognize that Vladimir Putin is no angel, and also understand that the West put him into a situation where he reasonably could claim, I cannot tolerate what your plans are here. What's the point of us doing this? It makes no sense. It's not in our interest.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Walsh, the other part of
what I would add, and one thing I would add as well, what I would add as well is Bill Burns was working for James Baker when James Baker told Genscher, as part of the reunification of Germany, that we would not seek to expand NATO to the east.
That's a lie, and it's based off this. I don't know how many. It doesn't make sense. Where would NATO expand to? There was no place east for NATO to go. Nobody knew the Soviet Union was about to collapse. That doesn't even make sense. The not 1 inch eastward referred to putting weapons or military installments in East Germany after reunification. It doesn't make sense that they would have agreed not to expand NATO eastward because the Soviet Union and the whole Warsaw Pact still existed. This is such a stupid talking point. This is so stupid.
Again, wise people like Bill Burns, James Baker understood this basic, perhaps unfounded, but genetic predisposition, opposing encroachment of NATO, Ukraine, their frontier.
Yeah. Joe Walsh, I mean, the other part of this that I think is significant is we've got the British Prime Minister going to the White House on Thursday. Emmanuel Macron was there Monday. And Trump is quite right, in my opinion, about the disparity between what America contributes to NATO in terms of resource, money, weaponry, and so on, compared to the European countries. And through his own hectoring about this, many of the other NATO countries are now paying a lot more money than they were before into NATO. But he's also right that ultimately Europe should be moving quickly to be able to secure itself collectively from people like Vladimir Putin. And I don't understand why there's any kickback to that. I think what the UK spends about 2.3% of GDP on defence. It's nowhere near enough. We live in dangerous times. And I think that Trump is very, very accurate in saying Europe is not punching its weight and needs to do that. And people dismiss it as America first, isolationism and so on. Well, yeah, but it doesn't mean to say he's not right. I do think that many European countries need to wake up.
Well, and Pierce, and they have the last 4 years while Trump wasn't in the White House. European nations dramatically increased their share to NATO. Europe has contributed more to Ukraine than the United States did. But Pierce, to this notion of encroachment of NATO.
Yeah.
Excuse me, you either believe NATO's a good thing or a bad thing. There's a reason why countries like Finland and so many other European countries want to be in NATO. It's a good thing. It's a defensive alliance for freedom-loving democratic nations.
Dave Smith, oh, that's so fucking funny. Look, he's like, oh, you think it? Oh, man. Let me tell you a little something about, you ever heard of the Iraq War, buddy? God, oh my God, I'm coming. I need to turn my camera off. I'm about to come so many times when he brings up how evil NATO is and how we're the exact same as China and the Soviet Union. And we're just so evil. Oh my God, he's about to give the most epic talking points. God, I'm so fucking hyped for this. Please, Dave Smith, lay into him with the Iraq and Afghanistan and then all the evil NATO talking points. Come on, show this guy what's up. Yes.
Encroaching upon Russia. NATO's a good thing, Pierce. It makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, but what about the point?
European
Hang on.
countries would want to join NATO.
But what about the point Dave Smith made, which is surely correct? If it was America and there was a country doing this, I think America would respond very aggressively to what they would perceive as an encroachment.
Well, again, that aside for 1 second, what are we to do? Finland wanted to join NATO. Finland now shares almost 1,000 miles of border with Russia. And Putin screamed to the high heavens that if Finland joined NATO, there'd be hell to pay. Nothing's happened. What do we do, Pierce? What do we do, Pierce, if peace-loving nations in Europe
the answer is obvious.
Look,
the answer is obvious. It's sad, but Ukraine is just not allowed to join because Russia said that if they do, they'll whip their ass. And we all have to be cucks to Russia. That's just realistic. That's just what we have to do. Plus NATO evil.
Look, Joe, I mean, look, aside from this, I mean, I got to say, I find it to be very immature thinking to say NATO's either good or bad. Like, I don't think that's ever how you should analyze the world. And you can say, I know you and Pierce, you and Tucker had your argument about this, but if you want to say NATO's a defensive alliance, I mean, I guess, except for all of the times when it's not, except for Serbia and Libya and Afghanistan. But okay, if you want to claim NATO as a defensive alliance, look, what we should do.
So Serbia was the intervention for the genocide. Okay, let me look up the Libya one. Was Libya a UN authorized one? Fuck, what was the name of that? (2011). Oof. Yeah. Okay. So the 2011 military intervention in Libya was NATO-led, but it was implementing this was a UN Security Council resolution that had, because it's a Security Council that had no votes opposing. So there were 10 votes in favor and 5 abstentions. So even, I believe it was China, Russia voted on, because Gaddafi was so fucking unhinged, which he was, that even they abstained from voting against that. So you can call it a NATO mission if you want, but it was UN Security Council stamped and approved. If it wouldn't have been NATO, it would have just been some other group of people that would have went in, because even your Security Council here voted to uphold that resolution.
Is not expand it. And I'm sorry, but who cares if other countries desire to join NATO?
That seems to be completely
Oh my
off the
God,
table.
I just pushed the wrong.
Oh, you can't say that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I don't agree.
Fuck, where was I at?
People like Bill Burns, James Baker understood this.
States did. But Pierce, to this notion of
Sure thinking to say NATO's either good or bad. You and Tucker times when it's not, except for except for Serbia and Libya and Afghanistan. But okay, if you want to claim NATO as a defensive alliance, look, what we should do is not expand it. And I'm sorry, but who cares if other countries desire to join NATO? That's not how we should be making these decisions. Of course, lots of countries would love to join NATO. I'm sure a huge majority of them, because yeah, you get your defense subsidized and you get protection from the most powerful government in the history of the world, the United States of America. But that's not the question. The point is, why would we want to expand NATO right up to Vladimir Putin's borders?
It was already there. It was already there. They didn't invade because of anything to do with NATO. Why do we keep spreading that talking point? 2014 wasn't a response to NATO. It was a response to Yanukovych being out. Ukraine wasn't any closer to getting in NATO in 2022 when they did the full-scale invasion. It's just a lie. There's a Russian talking point.
And look,
it's already,
the truth is
Dave,
that
expanded. It's already expanded right to Vladimir Putin's border.
I didn't say it wasn't.
If you can't, David, but Dave, again, every time I'm on with you, you accuse me of immature thinking. Granted, nothing is totally black and white, but would you not say generally over the course of history, here we go again, NATO has generally been kind of a force for good? Yeah?
No.
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 No, you can't say that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I don't agree with that.
All
I don't believe that NATO has been a force for good. I believe it's the exact type. It's the exact type of entangling alliance that our founders were unanimous in recommending that we don't get involved in. And Cenk, you can say I'm wrong, but dude, you're as anti-war as I am.
How did that? I didn't get that far in the Federalist Papers. What did our founders say about being involved in foreign nation affairs? Did we have a lot of? I don't even know. My mind is a blank there, but.
So why are you standing up for the European wing of the American empire? You know what this is, Cenk.
Dave, he's saying we're both.
No, hold on. So listen. You're both wrong and you're both right.
Okay.
So listen. I love, first of all, just quick side note here, that nobody can tell who's left or right anymore. This is beautiful.
Do you know what?
American
That's
politics.
exactly what I was thinking.
I agree with you on this, NATO expanded, but do they have to start conflicts right away after NATO expands? Can Russia not say, we've hated this expansion, I've been waiting for a good time to react? If people were honest about it, then I would accept the argument. The reality is Russia doesn't really like NATO expansion that much, sure, but the reason why isn't because they're afraid that NATO is going to attack them. That's bullshit. They don't like it because Russia likes to rape and pillage its neighbors when it's convenient to them. And if their neighbors are in NATO, it's really hard to do that. That's why they don't want them in NATO. If people like Dave Schitt were at least honest about that, he was like, well, yeah, of course Russia's really mad. They don't want NATO to have Ukraine inside of it. Then they wouldn't be able to invade Ukraine whenever they wanted to when they weren't being Belarusian enough for them. Then I'd be like, okay, well, at least he's using an honest argument now, right? Russia's not afraid of a fucking NATO invasion. And Ukraine being in NATO or not would not be the deciding factor on if NATO could even fucking invade. This is a retarded point. It's so stupid. I just don't like the dishonest. Just be honest about the argument.
Note here that nobody can tell who's left or right anymore. This is
Do you know
beautiful.
what?
American
That's
politics.
exactly what I was thinking. The whole political pendulum has completely gone crazy. Where if we had this debate 20 years ago, everyone would have known who the right are and who the left are. It is impossible anymore to define people in the way that we used to, and I like that.
I love it. I love it because we're now using our minds and independent judgment and actually talking about policy rather than strict ideology on either side. So now, look, I agree with Joe. The UN is very important. I know I'm a lone voice here these days in American media, but I 100% believe in the world working together. I think NATO is very important. I'm very supportive of NATO, and I think it has definitely been a force for good and has protected the alliance. Having said that, Dave is right. Just because you like NATO doesn't mean that NATO has to get closer and closer to Russia. I mean, Joe, you
yeah,
were...
that too. Destiny, Russia never claimed their 2022 invasion was because of Ukraine's potential NATO acceptance. Their entire premise was to denazify Ukraine and help protect native Russians within the Donbass. That's true too. Even Russia didn't use that excuse. It's like when people like Hassan will carry fucking buckets of water for Hamas, and you ask them, like, you acknowledge that, like, Hamas, they don't even fight with military uniforms, right? Like, they literally fight in civilian garb constantly. Like, people like oh fuck, I forgot that one guy's name. I want to call him Omar Omar? Fucking something. Like, I remember I asked him in a debate with this. I know Hassan would never acknowledge this. Like, these guys won't even acknowledge, but was it Omar Badar? They won't even acknowledge that, yeah, Hamas fights in civilian garb constantly, sure. They don't actually wear uniforms. They won't even acknowledge that. They make up lies for Hamas that Hamas doesn't even make up for themselves. Hamas will openly say, of course, we fucking blended with our civilian population. Fuck you, fuck Israel. We will fight however the fuck we can. We will use human shields. They don't give a fuck. Like, Hamas says this. And then people in the West will try to say, well, they're not actually doing that. Russia, there was that whole thing that leaked on accident of, like, that weird thing where Ukraine and Russia were did he say kindred spirits? I don't remember, but where Putin talked about like we're common souls or common spirits, or whatever bullshit from we have a long and rich history together. Like, even they weren't citing NATO expansionism in the beginning. So why the fuck are these losers doing it?
saying that if you like NATO, then you should be for NATO expansion. How about if NATO said, okay, we'd like to expand into Chechnya in the middle of Russia? That's mental. That doesn't help the alliance. It hurts the alliance. It makes our job of defending both Europe and America harder, not easier. If we go and randomly put Taiwan in NATO, that makes no sense. So we've got to be judicious about who we put into NATO. And then now...
Okay, Chechnya is a province in Russia, right? Is it considered like a semi-autonomous... But that's like part of Russia, no? Like, I don't know how that's okay.
When we get back to, okay, NATO and America and Russia, the opposite side, have to get to an agreement, and that's good. We're all going to save money. We're all going to get to peace. We're going to save lives. We have to get to an agreement. But back to the negotiation. If two companies are having trouble getting to an agreement and they bring me in as a mediator, and then instead of helping them get to an agreement, I go, now I want money for my company. Well, that doesn't help the negotiations at all. It makes the mediation and the negotiation much more difficult, because now you've entered a third party in there that had no business there, and he's demanding like some outrageous number, and then he starts attacking the people who brought him into the negotiation. Just so, look, we all want to get to peace, protect NATO without encroaching on Russia.
But Cenk, it makes no sense to see America as the neutral negotiator in that. Like, we're not coming into a deal to broker a peace. We are the other side of the negotiating table. Ukraine would have had to do whatever Russia wanted to do if we didn't give them a blank check. So it's just not exactly
a blank check, motherfucker. Are you serious? What would it have averaged out to? What, like $80 billion worth of combined aid per year? That's a blank check? A blank check? What did we spend in Afghanistan? It was north of $1 trillion, wasn't it? I don't even know what the fuck we spent our money on over there. It was north of $1 trillion, wasn't it? How much total U.S. spend in Afghanistan? Oh my goodness. Watson Institute for International Public Affairs, forever reliable they are. Since invading Afghanistan in 2001, the United States spent $2.313 trillion, which includes operations in Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Analogous. I mean, look, again, I think
but
it's
Dave,
kind of
I agree
strange.
with you on that. But then why are we attacking our own ally? That doesn't make any sense at all.
Well,
Other
I
than
mean,
the mineral
that's
rights,
totally,
lithium is in the batteries in Tesla, just in case you don't know.
Well, this is
this is just how Trump negotiates. This is how Trump negotiates.
Also, I mean, never underestimate the fact that we are dealing with Donald Trump here, and if you said something to piss him off, he is petty enough to then go around and attack you for a couple of weeks.
You know what? On that very point, there was a report.
It's about the money.
Well, there was a report in the Financial Times actually overnight, right to that point, Dave, which was that apparently Zelensky, when he was first told that the Americans wanted $500 billion worth of minerals, lost his rag so spectacularly with whichever American official was relaying this information that you could hear his voice apparently screaming down the corridors, and that presumably got relayed to Trump, who already has a bit of a bad feeling about Zelensky going right back to when he first came into power and the whole thing with Hunter Biden and everything else. And Trump is, he does take stuff very personally. I always say he's got the thickest skin of anyone I've ever seen in public life, soaking up stuff that would kill anybody else. But he also has the thinnest. And
how does that make sense? What?
He harbors grudges, and he'll use that against him. And I think that's a lot of what's going on with Zelensky. I think he took against him personally, but that doesn't mean that ultimately, at the end of all this, there might not be the best possible deal that Ukraine right now could probably hope for, which may involve a bit of transaction on minerals, but ultimately may bring the war to an end that's killing so many of their people. Anyway, look, I want to change just briefly to the other war, which we mustn't forget, which is the war between Israel and Hamas. And Bassy, I'll start with you on this. Netanyahu has suspended the release of Palestinian prisoners because of the, as he puts it, the repeated violations by Hamas involving the ceremonies, which he says have been dishonoring the Israeli hostages, cynically using them for propaganda. So he's now delayed the release of the 600, I think it was, Palestinians that were due to be released in exchange. Now that's obviously a ratcheting up of tensions here. But I've got to say, just watching this from a distance, these scenes of Hamas in full force with all their regalia, putting coffins of babies underneath pictures of Netanyahu looking like the devil, beaming that to the world, sending back the wrong remains of that poor woman whose children were also murdered, etc., forcing one of the released hostages, it seems, to kiss Hamas terrorists standing there.
Forcing them? I thought it was just because they were so cool.
Actually, before we discuss that.
That's what
Let's just watch
Hassan
that
said.
moment. Now, you heard the deafening roars of approval there for what appears to be, a conciliatory kiss by this hostage, Omar Shemtov. But his father's come out and said he did it under duress. He was forced to do it. We don't know yet. We want to hear it from him. But it certainly looked that way. Somebody goes up to him, talks to him, and the next thing he's doing that for the cameras, and it's obviously a huge propaganda moment for Hamas. So, Batia, it's all messy, it's all horrible, but the overriding imagery is that Hamas haven't gone anywhere. This war was supposed to be the end of Hamas. They don't look like they're over, and they look like they have a lot of popularity still with Palestinian people in Gaza.
It says in Genesis, God tells Abraham, whoever blesses you will be blessed, and whoever curses you will be cursed. And I keep thinking...
Oh, she's got to be pro-Palestine, right? 1 trillion%, right? The Russian marching order. It's got to be, right?
Of this as the perfect metaphor for those scenes from that parade. Because, of course, to attend a parade in which the bodies of babies which have been strangled and mutilated are celebrated is accursed.
No, she was Omega Zionist? Oh, shit, was she? Oh, wait, because is she Jewish? Oh, that's a weird combination of things. Okay. I don't remember my arguments with her about.
Right? To bring a child to a parade celebrating the strangling and mutilation of babies' bodies is cursed. To live...
Wait, is that kind of weird? Did she just quote Jesus from the Bible, or did she just quote the Bible? Wait, that's not kind of weird? She's pro whatever Trump is? Is she?
In those scenes, you will be blessed. And it says in Genesis,
Oh,
God
no,
tells
okay.
Abraham, whoever blesses you will be blessed, and whoever curses you will be cursed. And I keep thinking of this as the perfect metaphor for those scenes from that parade. Because, of course, to attend a parade in which the bodies of babies which have been strangled and mutilated are celebrated is accursed, right? To bring a child to a parade celebrating the strangling and mutilation...
Doesn't she have a Star of David necklace? Oh, true. I forget. I don't know all the Jewish symbology, okay? Fuck that. Look, I just associate all that shit with Satan worship, all right? That was Old Testament. Oh, Genesis is the Old Testament? Thank you.
Of babies' bodies is cursed. To live under a barbaric rule like Hamas that would put on a show like that is to be cursed. To be so morally
Then
depraved
Israel's
is its
10,000 times
own
more cursed.
punishment.
Oh.
And I think that is the point here,
Cenk just
Pierce.
woke up.
This is the beginning of the
Watch
end,
out.
not just of Hamas, but of the left that defended them. Because, the left thinks Israel is the Palestinians' curse. It is the left who have cursed the Palestinians with their support because they are prolonging the moral depravity that has earned the disgust of every good human being on planet Earth. And I am so grateful that my government, Donald Trump, the United States of America, stands with the Jewish people against such pure, absolute evil, because it truly is going to be a new era. There is no going back from a parade celebrating the mutilated, strangled bodies of babies.
Okay,
Babies.
Yeah, so what Hamas did is so stupid, and I totally...
That's stupid. I love Cenk. I love the terrorist worship. It's fucking epic, okay? Never change, okay? You pro-Pally people, I love it, all right? Never change. Okay, let's be real for a moment. Strangling a baby. Was that confirmed? I feel like babies have, like, huge necks. I feel like that would be, like, a lot of effort. Or maybe not. Because people do it accidentally. No, they roll over onto them, or you use a pillow. Who strangles a baby? That's a high effort murder, even for a kid. Jesus.
I agree that it's immoral. But are we ever going to talk about the 15,000 dead children that Israel slaughtered? You want to talk about cursed? If you think the Palestinians are cursed because of 36 children killed during October 7th, how cursed is Israel for the 15,000 children that they slaughtered? They crushed their skulls. They lit them on fire. They destroyed and killed tens of thousands of children. And now you're saying, oh my God, because I see one with my own eyes, that's Israeli. Oh, the Israeli lives are worth, what, 10,000 Palestinian children? 100,000 Palestinian? Is there any number of Palestinian children that you would have any sympathy for? So screw Hamas.
Do the thing, do the voice by the end. You guys, you. I love it when he does that one. That's my favorite Cenk Manderson. You, do it. You guys.
But that does not justify Israel.
Do it.
Slaughter after slaughter after slaughter. And go, oh yeah, Hamas made you do it. Hamas didn't make you do it. Israel is reveling in it. It is now a terrorist state. It's rolling tanks into the West Bank. They've taken Trump's ridiculous plan in Gaza as a green light. And of course, this was all arranged ahead of time. That's why Netanyahu supported Trump. That's why Trump got $337 million from the Adelson family. So now they're rolling tanks into the West Bank to slaughter more Palestinian children.
Wait.
So I hate that both sides are doing this, and I hate that Israel is doing it 15,000 times more, because that's how many more babies they've killed and children that they've killed than the one that the entire U.S. and Western media is focused on. Can we not see that when it's an Israeli baby, that the whole world is like, this is the most important thing in the world? But
Cenk has a strawman voice too. I love it. Come on, Cenk, give me one of those. Give me one of those, please.
Parades were there.
But then don't tell me that 15,000
How many parades were there in Israel celebrating the casualties in Gaza? I mean, how many parades were there of Israelis celebrating the dead children?
All right, let me bring in Dave Smith. Let me bring in Dave.
Well, because I actually think, listen, but first off, let me just say, I almost, look, that was sickening, that video, the reports of what was done to these hostages, and I don't know that all this evidence has actually been released. And
True, it's not even real. Whatever they did, Israel was worse. What did Ethan say? Did he call him a capo Jew? Is that what the traitor Jew? That's who Dave Smith is.
Maybe find out at some point, but it's all sickening and horrible. And I hate to even use it to then try to win a political argument after it. I mean, look, there's no questioning. It is sickening to see like a big crowd celebrating these things. But I do think, like, Bacha, you make a fair point. It's like, yeah, okay, we don't exactly see the same type of kind of primitive brutality on the Israeli side. There is this tremendous bias, though, I think, toward I don't know exactly how to say this. It's like a more an anti-barbaric bias. So if Hamas runs in and is just gunning down random people.
We have a bias against barbarism. Oh, no. Not the dreaded anti-barbaric bias. What the fuck? I know the point he's about to make, though, and it's going to be fucking retarded. He's like, it's really bad if somebody comes down with a gun and they start mowing down people, but if we do it with a bomb, if we do it with a missile, somehow it's more righteous. That's crazy, man. That's what he's about to say.
People, there's something where that triggers a certain reaction out of something, whereas, collateral damage or targeted strikes don't trigger that same response from people. The thing is that, like, if it's your kid on the side of that collateral damage, it probably feels awfully similar. And so when you ask, like, oh, are there parades where, for, say, like, Israeli hostages or prisoners or whatever they want to call them? No, I have seen Israeli politicians, as well as American politicians, signing the bombs, including Nikki Haley, before they get launched into Gaza. I don't know. I mean, I find that pretty sickening also. And, like, to Cenk's point, there is just, like, don't get me wrong, okay? I'm trying to, like, be as charitable to you as I can. I would rather be next door neighbors with like an IDF soldier than a Hamas militant. Okay, like there is a difference between the two. But when you're talking about the level of human suffering that Israel has inflicted on the people who were not members of Hamas, who were probably more victims of Hamas than anyone in Israel was, on larger numbers at least. There is just like, I'm sorry, it does seem after a while, like a lot, as I say all the time, a lot of the people on the pro-Israel side just value Israeli life more than they do Palestinian life, and that is your right. That is your right. I understand. I value my children's life more than I value other children's lives. That's okay. That's my right. It's not reasonable for me to require the law or politicians to value my children's life more than other children's lives. Okay. And I think that's the essence of it.
Let me bring in. I want to ask General Kimmich.
Can I just respond very briefly?
Well, very quickly. Yeah.
Very quickly. Dave, the whole of our civilization is based on the difference between barbaric physical violence inflicted by one human against another, and the kind of collateral damage that tragically happens from justified warfare, as long as it is proportionate. Now, we could debate that. We have debated the question of proportion, but the entire Western civilization is based on that distinction.
I have from the start of this war. Hang on one second. Hang on. I have said from the start of this war that there were two things that really concerned me. One was proportionality. Right? We know that 1,200 people were killed on October the 7th, and another 7,000 were wounded. But 1,200 were killed. of whom a smallish, relatively smallish number were children. What we've seen, and obviously 250 more were kidnapped, including horrendously a baby and other children, and that was all horrific. And anyone who thinks otherwise, I have no time for. But I always say one or two things. Well, what is proportionate? And it seemed to me about the middle of last year, I began to sense that this was just getting grotesquely disproportionate. But mainly because I didn't see that the end game was going to be successful. The end game was supposed to be the eradication of Hamas, a terror group. There is no sign that they are eradicated. And in fact, US intelligence, and I'll come to General Kimmett here about this, the US intelligence reports about a week ago suggested that for every Hamas terrorist who's been killed, they've already been replaced by people with similar ideology. So my fear was always that a disproportionate response by Israel would actually fuel the ideology behind Hamas, make them more popular, not less. And in the process, we've seen, as Cenk said, 15,000.
Why doesn't anybody apply this same logic over to... Well, I guess Piers isn't pro-Russian, but like, why not apply this to Russia then? Like, aren't we worried that they're making anti-Russian Ukrainian terrorists? Aren't we worried that Azov is going to become a million times more Nazi? Aren't we worried about how disproportionate? Like, notice how... fuck, I forgot all my international humanitarian law of armed conflict bullshit. You said bellum is cause for war, and you said bello is behavior in war. I think you said bellum. Fuck, am I getting these mixed up? When there's no way that's right. You said bellum. Oh, it is. God, I'm so fucking genius. You said bellum. When they're talking about Russia and their war against Ukraine, they're speaking in terms of causes for war that are like, how do you say this? Conceptual, which is how war is, by the way, it's generally thought that way. It's conceptual. It's not like, oh, they just did a thing that killed 482 people. Well, we're going to do a thing that kills 482 people. It's more like, oh, they captured some piece of land and now we need to get that land back. It's not like a calculation like, well, you know, they killed 127 people taking over that land. We did a counterattack to try to take the land back. We killed 250 people. We killed more, 2 times as many as they killed. So we should probably stop. That's not how people think about it. They think of the causes for war. And when they're analyzing Russia's, when they're analyzing the justification for Russia's war, the justification for Russia's war is always done on a conceptual level. Like, oh, well, the jus ad bellum here, the conceptual level for the war here is the expansion of NATO. But then when they talk about Israel-Palestine, it's jus ad bellum, yes. But when they're talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, well, now it just has to be like a comparison of number of deaths. So as long as, like, Hamas could invade and kill 500 people, and then I guess Israel is only justified in their response if they kill the same number of people. Like, that's so weird. Like, it's obviously weird and stupid. It's intuitively weird and stupid, which is why when they talk about Russia, they don't apply the same logic. Like, it's so dumb.
Children reported now to be killed, and that's just, whatever you try and say, and by justification, it is unjustified to kill that number of children. It just is, isn't it?
Well, I think we're having a little bit.
Like, that doesn't even make any sense. It's not justified to kill any number of children. It's not justified to kill one child. If any children, assuming we're talking about like babies, we're not talking about like 17-year-olds or 16-year-olds fighting, right? Like, any baby or person like that is killed, that has to be like collateral damage or something. You can't target children intentionally just to kill children for the purpose of killing children. It doesn't matter how many people the other side killed. So it's just like, it's a ridiculous premise even. Like,
bit of historical myopia here. Maybe I'm just kind of old to remember the fact that we had 3,000 Americans killed on December 7th, 1941 by the Japanese. And by the end of the war, we dropped 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Correct. We didn't measure in World War II. We didn't measure the number of deaths on both sides to look for proper justification. Nobody does that. That's not how these things work. That is absolutely correct. Good job.
And I suspect there were probably about 150 to 250,000 children that were incinerated in that attack alone. So I think that we are perhaps forgetting our own history and what we have done in a scenario of total war for the United States, for Great Britain, and for Western Europe. And candidly, I think it was the right thing to do because it was total war to destroy the Japanese leadership and the Japanese empire. The Jewish state, Israel, believes they're at total war with those terrorist groups. But you're absolutely right, Piers. Not only was Hamas celebrating that, but remember, today, Hezbollah was celebrating the death of Hassan Nasrallah, and it sure looked like there were a lot of Hezbollah operators still fighting. It's the terrorist calculus.
Why was Hezbollah celebrating Nasrallah's death? Or were they just holding like a celebration, like that's what they were for a funeral? Like a...
Not only was Hamas celebrating that, but remember today, Hezbollah was celebrating the death of Hassan Nasrallah.
He just means like the funeral thing. Okay, yeah. That's...
Sure looked like there were a lot of Hezbollah operators still fighting. It's the terrorist calculus. Kill one, create two. But in terms of the notion of, number one, the Israeli response to the Hamas attack on October 7th, they see it as total war. They are fighting as if it is total war, the same way America did the same in 1941 to 1945 against the Japanese alone. We lost 3,000, they lost 1 million. We dropped 2 nuclear weapons on Japan.
Yeah, you make very good points. Joe Walsh, final word to you.
I don't think so.
Okay, we've run out of time, Sandy, but Joe, final word to you.
Just real quickly, I agree with Betnya. The ideology, the hatred of Jews was there before October 7th. The belief that Israel does not have a right to exist was there before October 7th. It didn't need October 7th to go off the charts. There will never be peace in this region as long as the Palestinian people, Pierce, not just Hamas, do not believe Israel has a right to exist, period.
But there will also never be...
It's just nonsense.
There will also
Palestine
never be...
doesn't exist. When is it going to get through your thick heads that Palestine doesn't exist because of the murderous terrorist state of Israel? How many slaughtered children do you need before you say, oh, right, the Palestinians don't exist?
Oh, he's charged up. He was charged up. He's about to do it. I need to hear that one. Come on. I need the jank cadence. He's been charging up this whole time. He's about to let it go. We got like 2 minutes. Come on.
And are the Palestinians in the middle of that slaughter as 15,000 of their children were lit on fire by Israel? Are they supposed to love Israel? Is that the ludicrous, insane demand? Oh, you don't love us enough. We're going to kill more of your children. No,
Well,
this is all of that just propaganda.
I think the bottom line is...
so
The bottom line
we
is...
almost got
Mongols
it.
killed 800,000 people in Baghdad because it was all-out war. That doesn't mean Israel should do it. That doesn't mean the U.S. should do it today.
You only get to peace when the Palestinian people have the same rights, human rights, as everybody else around them. And that has been the running saw in this conflict. And you can make a great argument for both sides throughout the 75 years. But the one, to me, unarguable point is that Palestinians in Gaza in particular have been living with diminished human rights to their neighbors. And that cannot be allowed to continue going forward. And it's going to be incredibly difficult to get to any lasting peace, incredibly difficult to get to a two-state solution. Everybody knows that. But ultimately, you've got to afford the Palestinian people the same basic human rights that we all enjoy. And until that happens, I don't see this ever ending. Anyway, we've got to leave it there. Fascinating debate by all of you. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. The only boss around here is me. If you enjoy our show, we ask only one simple thing. Hit subscribe on YouTube and follow Piers Morgan Uncensored on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And in return, we will continue our mission to inform, irritate, and entertain. And we'll do it all for free. Independent, uncensored media has never been more critical, and we couldn't do it without you.
Thank you. Fuck. Hold on 1 second. Oh, this guy. Where are my wire bros at? Just Elon Musk casually undermining the division of powers in the government. It's good. If any judge anywhere can block every presidential order everywhere, we do not have democracy. We have tyranny of the judiciary. Hello. It's almost like federal judges have the authority to rule on federal matters that impact the entirety of the United States of America. It's almost like that's what the whole point of the federal judiciary is. Okay, hold on 1 second. Disbar, impeach, indict, imprison, and then deport all activists. And then deport? Imprison and deport? All right, based.